Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this fourth session about following up the commitment of different NGOs on the climate. Is everybody? Wait, here. It's okay. So, I'm Camille Evain, working as a environment and climate head of service for Action Against Hunger France. The sound is okay? Everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, perfect. So I will just introduce for 5-6 minutes this update, this follow-up of the various commitments, just to give some element of context about the USAID crisis that most of organization is trying to manage as best as possible. When we look at the past, from the beginning of this commitment on the climate, we can see that in 2020, none of NGOs, or almost none of NGOs, was committed on the climate topic. This story started in 2020 for most of us, while 10 French organizations decided to commit on the climate. We will keep in mind this 5 commitment in the presentation just after. So these 10 organizations commit to measure their carbon footprint, reduce their carbon emission, adapt their program, and communicate on their different progress. During 21 and 22 and 23, most of NGO did start the work to estimate their carbon footprint. At the end of the 3 years follow-up report, maybe 2/3 of the committed NGO have performed their carbon accounting. Last year, most of NGOs start the work to design a trajectory to reduce their carbon footprint, designing an action plan. And without surprise, we see in this different action plan the fact to invest in green energy or green efficiency or energy efficiency, to manage the vehicle fleet, or to change behavior such as the food or the ambient temperature of heating and cooling. A very classical action plan, by the way. Most of NGOs were ready to start to implement such action to reduce their footprint, but the surprise is the heavy impact of the USAID budget reduction, who impacts a lot the different organizations. So I will just come back on this budget reduction from USAID due to the new administration starting from 20 January, the last 20 January. So everybody has in mind the seism who provoked this USAID crisis. USAID was a major contributor to the humanitarian funding, between 30 and 40% of the amount of the aid. And for the environment, that have 4 major impacts. The first one is by reducing the humanitarian activity. Clearly, all our work have shown that our carbon footprint is almost directly linked to our operation volume. That means the budget reduction will be translated into the reality by less procurement, less travels, less transportations, etc., etc. And so that will automatically reduce our carbon footprint. So all what we have in our action plans means reducing the flights, modify our procurement to procure less, procure more locally and do less transportation. By the way, because of the budget restriction or budget decrease, of course, our carbon footprint will automatically reduce and will reduce the worst way possible. That is exactly what we wanted to avoid. Our goal was to reduce our carbon emissions, keeping the same activity scale. And finally, we will reduce our carbon footprint by reducing our scale. And it's exactly what we want to avoid. The second point is USAID was one donor, was still for the part who remain, is one donors who found quite well the support cost. And the support cost was used mainly by all organizations to finance their environmental and climate action for all the structural activities. And so while reducing the support cost, that will clearly have an impact on our own activity for the environmental management. The third point is, of course, the reduction of the climate finance, and that will have very several impacts. So USAID and the American government was not the major donor on the climate finance, but by the way, there is additional millions or billions who will disappear for the climate finance, and that will not help at all to mitigate the consequences of the climate change, of course. And the last impact will not impact us directly for the moment, but it's absolutely not negligible, is that everybody observe the global backlash on the science, and especially on the climate science. And because we will see some world data disappearing, and because our monitoring systems are based on this world meteorological data, for example, early warning systems, that works because we compare the temperature of today because the average temperature already observed in past years. But if the data disappear, we cannot say anymore if it's a normal situation or an exceptional situation, and we cannot use the gap between today's situation and past situation as a trigger. Voilà. So that will change a lot of things. We don't have in mind all the impact yet, but this is, of course, to be monitored. Now I let the floor to Johana to present the follow-up of the organization.
Thank you, Camille. And I just, Aline and I take the same mind. We just put in the chat with regards to your last point and the role of scientists and the whole upheaval that's going on. We're hosting a webinar on this next month. So thank you so much, Camille, for this introduction. Thank you so much for being here. I think I know most of you, but just in case, I'm Johana. I'm a researcher, environment and climate researcher at Groupe URD, but I'm also the coordinator of the Réseau Environnement Humanitaire. And so I'm here to present the results of the Statement of Commitment of Humanitarian Organizations on Climate's follow-up report at year+4. So I'm talking on behalf of my colleagues of the RH and of the signatories, and do feel free to jump in at any point, either by raising your hand or putting a message in the chat if needed. So just a quick word on the Statement of Commitment itself. If my slides will work. So as introduced by Camille, the Statement of Commitment by Humanitarian Organizations on the climate was launched in 2020. You should be able to click on the links as well if you want to have more information. And initially we had 10 signatories, and since then we've actually had 5 more. So we have now a total of 15 signatories, and all the logos of the different organizations are down on the slide. And the 2 latest signatories were the French Red Cross and Triangle Génération Humanitaire, who signed on in November 2024. And so with the different slides that are going to come up, they were not included in the analysis because the report was published in December 2024. So I'm here to present the results from the Year Plus 4 follow-up report. This is a report that we publish annually, so you can have access to last year, so Year Plus 3 and Year Plus 4 on the slide. And what's really important for us in both this report and being able to follow, do such webinars, to present, is really for external advocacy for donors, but also other organizations that might be interested in this topic. And we hope that this webinar will be insightful to you. Just a little recap on what the statement of commitment actually contains. Signatories have committed to 5 different points. The first one is related to the measure of their impact. So that is both the carbon footprint with the carbon footprint calculation, but also the environmental footprint with the use of environmental assessment tools, for example. Second, they've committed to reduce their carbon footprint with 2 different numbered targets of -30% by 2025 and -50% by 2030. And it is up to the signatories to specify this commitment, meaning to specify the baseline year, reference year, and the nature of the reduction. But I'll go into more detail about this later. Thirdly is to adapt their activities to the new challenges that come from climate change. Sorry, is everyone having issue with my sound? Or is that okay for you? No? Okay, because I just saw it on the chat. Let me know if it's okay.
It's okay. My side is okay.
Okay. Fourth is to communicate in a yearly manner on the progress that the signatories are making with regards to their commitments. And so, okay, I'm going to stop touching my mic. Maybe this will be better. And so the report and this webinar is part of this commitment. And fifth is to encourage other players to step up their ambition. And that is also one of the main aim of this webinar. Just a quick note on the methodology that was followed for the report, just so that you know where the data comes from. We did a survey that was sent to all the signatories and that was validated by the ROH steering committee. We had 100% response rate, meaning that all the representative of the 13 organizations that took part in the analysis all responded, but some questions might not be answered by all. We anonymized the data, and we want to thank again the different signatories for taking the time to fill this in. The overall objective of the report, I've said it before, but is linked to the 4th commitment of the statement. But really it is to be able to assess the progress made by each signatory. But we anonymize the data so that we can really identify the successes and barriers, so that signatories feel free to share the challenges that they might have, so that they can inform the rest of the sector who might be interested to in turn reduce their footprint. It's really about being transparent and highlighting the challenges and the thought process that is going on at the organizational level. And just one main limit of this analysis is that it is declarative, and so I just want you to keep this in mind. So if we're going through the results, I'm not going to go through each commitment specifically. If you're interested in having those results, you can have a look at the report. It's available in the 30-page report or summary of 2 pages. You have the links at the bottom of each slide, and they're available in both French and in English. But I will highlight some of the main results and the main questions that the signatories are asking themselves. So firstly, with regards to the first commitment on the measure of their footprint, we can see that in 2024, all the signatories have started to reduce their carbon footprint. 9 of them were done at the time, meaning that they have a baseline to be able to monitor their reduction. And that is what we refer to when we mean also to specify the commitments. It's also to have a baseline year to be able to then monitor how the progress is going. We can also see that based on this analysis, most signatories have already developed a reduction strategy and drawn up action plans followed based on that strategy. And the different ones that are public are also available in the report if you want to have a look at it. More than just calculating and doing strategies, we can see also the signatories have been implementing different actions to reduce their footprint. That's their environmental footprint as a whole. And they started obviously with the most obvious and affordable actions. But then at the same time, and this is something that we're seeing progressing over the years, is that organizations are working on actions that are more complex. And they're doing so not only by grabbing the low-hanging fruits, but they're also like setting up working groups, advocacy, and raising awareness within their own organization. What we're seeing overall is that the technical considerations linked to, for example, everything that related to carbon calculation, which can be a bit of a headache for those of you who work in this. All those different technical considerations are gradually giving way to some questions about the social and ethical issues that are at stake. And it is increasingly becoming apparent that there is a need also for change management support. Because some organizations are not as easy, for example, as setting the heating or the AC a degree less or a degree less intense, but really require people's behavior to change. And so there's this need that we're seeing increasingly within the signatories for change management. And we can see that increasingly they're working on what is considered acceptable within the organization. So what are actions that are accepted and that other members of the staff of the organizations are willing to put into place. To exemplify this, we can think about vegetarian meals. That can be one way to reduce one's carbon footprint overall, but it might be acceptable in some countries when it is not in others. So it's really about understanding what is acceptable, what works in a setting, and what doesn't in another. With regards to the specific topic of adaptation, compared to last year, we can see that organizations are analyzing a little bit more the climate risks that are on their projects, but that overall is still not a priority for them. I do want to highlight that the statement of commitment does have a big gap with regards to adaptation because most of the questions are related to the project level and not really about the ways of functioning. But some signatories have mentioned the need to think both adaptation and mitigation together, not separately, in order to avoid maladaptation. In the report, we go through the detail of the example of Gret, which is one of the signatories, who refer to a project of a hydroelectric plant, that was implemented in order to notably lower the levels of greenhouse gases, but because there was a lack of water, it really made the plant was no longer working as it should, and so overall we had an example of maladaptation. We go into a little bit more detail on this example in the report, but what we see here is that increasingly organizations are going to have more challenges with regards to the operating modality, so not only at the project level, but overall as how organizations are responding to new crises, to crises that are getting worse, to crises that we might not know how to respond to, and also new ways of responding to them. And so all of these questions are raised. I don't know if everyone has an answer yet, but that is something that we're seeing increasingly within organizations' progress with regards to the statement of commitment. Organizations are facing lots of challenges. I'm not gonna go into detail about all these different challenges. We go more into detail on these challenges in the report, but the idea is to give an overview of the variety of challenges that organizations can be facing, from things that I think you've all heard, but the unavailability of staff, the internal resistance to change that you can have, the mere availability of technical solutions. And what we see beyond those issues that were apparent in the years before, increasingly, is the issue about financial visibility for long-term investment, and also the need to promote a new business model. This is particularly, the report was done in November, December 2024, so before we were aware of the huge budget cuts that were going to come across. This is even more relevant now on how to think about doing this ecological transition with a new business model and with the resources that we have. Another challenge that was just mentioned that we couldn't see in the previous reports was that some organizations, as Camille mentioned at the beginning, have been doing this since 2020, but even longer than this. And so for some, there's kind of this transition momentum that is running out of steam. And signatories highlighted also on the communal and collective aspect that is needed with regards to this specific topic, to be able to kind of keep a momentum internally and externally. Beyond all the challenges that we've mentioned, there are two main questions that were raised in the report that are quite complex, and that I just want to highlight in this presentation. The first one is on the nature of the reduction. So Camille actually gave a perfect introduction to the slide before, but I said it before, you need, signing on to the statement of commitment, you need to specify your commitment both to the baseline year and to the nature of the reduction. You can either have a reduction in absolute value or in relative value. If you have a reduction in absolute value, you would have X amount of CO2 equivalent emission in 2019, for example, and you would need to divide this by 2 to have your target for 2030. You could have also choose to have a reduction in relative value, and so to have it to another proxy value such as the size of your business, or chiffre d'affaires in English, or the number of full-time equivalent staff. You could choose another value to set it up to, meaning that in the case that we're facing right now with a big budget restrictions, where organizations are unfortunately going to shrink, the number of projects are going to shrink, and if you did choose your commitment in absolute terms, then that means that automatically you will reach, well, not automatically, but you will reach your overall reduction. But you haven't changed the way to conduct your projects, or changed the way you are thinking about the aid that you're delivering with regards to the environment. So this can seem like somewhat obscure, but especially in these times, we can see that it has really like far-reaching consequences on the growth of an international or aid organization, and that those questions need to be asked. Behind this, there's a ton of different questions, and we are going to go a little bit more into detail about this aspect and the next question that we'll go through in the session after this, because this is really something that we're thinking about with the different signatories. But is it that all activities, have, with similar environmental impacts, have the same value? Do all organizations have to reduce their emissions in the same proportion, regardless of the levels of emissions? And kind of behind this is also a questioning with regards to the right to develop of countries in the global south. So do all countries have to reduce their footprint? So regardless of their historical responsibility of emissions. So those are all questions that are being raised in the report and that we will try, I think, to go a little bit deeper afterwards. But it's also that we don't have the answers. That's also why it's under complex questions. Those are just questions that are being asked by the signatories. Similarly, on the specific commitments, so as I was saying, there are different levels of responsibility, and sometimes we can hear that the ecological transition can be an injunction from the global north to the global south, and also sometimes it can just be seen as another constraint for people in the field. This is particularly so. I just put data here from another survey that was done by the Commission Climat Développement of Coordination Sud. You can click on the link if you want to know more about the survey, where 80% of the HR resources that are dedicated to the ecological transition in their survey are located at the head office. So this is kind of dissonance between kind of the talk and what can be done concretely. And so organizations are questioning themselves on how to define fair reduction commitment, how to implement a just transition. Part of this answer might be the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's just to highlight that not everyone has the same responsibility historically for the emissions and not the same capacities to be to be able to implement the ecological transition. We'll go more into detail, and if you want to deep dive on this, there is a report that was done also by Groupe URD that you can click on the link there. So that was a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to, that we're eager to discuss with you. But just in terms of the next steps for the signatories, you might have heard, that I said that the first commitment was in 2025. This report was published in 2024. So there's a whole question about the achievement of that result and of the results in 2030. What signatories are saying is that the commitments are still a political driver, both internally and externally on that specific topic, but that it is more perceived as a framework of ambition with an overall target than an obligation to achieve results. And that together they need to build a common narrative to at the same time have this strong environmental ambition, and then at the same time being able to highlight really the challenges, the progress that is being made, but the challenges, the good things, to be transparent about the way that the ecological transition is going, and to be but still maintain this ambition. So again, that's something that the signatories are working on together. And overall, they have an appeal. We finish off the report with an appeal to the sector. So we asked, for those of you who are here today, but also just in general, to ask those complex questions that we've raised and to consider the environmental commitments from a holistic perspective, not only focusing on one aspect, for example, I don't know, the carbon footprint, to commit and to reduce your overall environmental footprint. You could do so, for example, as a first step to sign the statement of commitment if you haven't done so. And also a specific point on the need for adaptation and to help communities to become more resilient and to prepare to the new reality that we're going to face. I think this is especially critical right now as the sector is going through huge funding cuts. And this is really something that we did want to highlight as an appeal to the sector. So I hope that this presentation was clear. If it was not, I highly recommend going to the report if you have any questions. But also, if you have any questions, do feel free to either raise your hand or put them in the chat. And if the signatories want to add something about your own personal experience or the reason why you joined the statement, also please do feel free to do so now. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that I can change for the next section. And Camille Evain, I'll pass it on to you.
Yes, thank you, Johana, for the presentation. Does any signatory organization want to witness or react or say something? Yes, Mathieu?
Yes, I will just speak for the French Red Cross in that case. For us, well, we recently joined the working group, so we don't have that update or that experience with what have been done, but definitely the engagement and commitment that were behind it was definitely something that the French Red Cross adhere to, and in that sense, we found very logical then to sign off, and also because of this knowledge sharing that we have spread across the working group. So definitely it is for us a way to go, and we strongly encourage others to follow us on that one.
Thank you. Someone else? Maybe Camille or Manon? Just because I see you with your camera.
Well, I'm not sure. So I'm Camille. I'm responsible for the environment in HI. And we'll have a quick a little session of question and answer afterwards, where we dive a bit deeper into all the questions that Johana raised. So I don't want to spoil the next part. But I think HI actually was in the group that started working together, but not a signatory until last year or 2023. I can't remember. And so I think for us, we've definitely having this commitment and having this group to work with has been a huge help and a huge push for the climate ambition within HI. And we adhere, I guess, completely with all of the questions and the challenges that have been raised in this report, where we see basically once the first steps, and I don't want to say easy ones because I don't feel like there were many easy steps in this journey, but like once the first steps are taken, it's definitely feeling like a challenge to keep the momentum going and to keep going for those deep transformation of the way we work, beyond just sort of surface improvements on some of our practices. And so I think this is going to be also one of the challenges, and maybe one of the opportunity of what we are seeing right now with the budget constraints, where we might have no choice but to rethink profoundly the way we work. And the question is, are we going to be able to integrate environment into that profound change?
Yes. Clear. Okay. Thank you. Johana, do we continue on the Q&A? Maybe that will enlighten us on some topics.
For sure. So I'll pass it on over then to Camille again.
I thought if anyone else not in the group has questions, maybe we can don't hesitate to raise them now, before we go into this little Q&A. And if you don't, then this next part is designed to make you work as well, and try to have feedback on what we're doing. As Johana was saying, I think we are asking a lot of questions and we don't have the answers, and so we wanted to see, first check, I guess, that we are not the only ones scratching our heads about all of this, and then try to see what everybody else is also thinking about this. So unless there is a pressing question or clarification on the report that you might want to ask Johana to answer now, I can go into the next part. Maybe you are too clear, Johana. You should like.
No, maybe I can just, because I know this might be confusing, just on a slide that I had, maybe I can show it. Sorry. On this slide, you might see that the total is 14. It's not that I don't know how to count. It's that because there's an organization, because exactly of that issue between absolute and relative terms, they have actually 2 targets to fit kind of the way that the organization is set up. We're going more in detail about this in the report, but this is also to highlight that there are lots of questions behind this issue, and that there might be confusion also at some points, and we can see the fact that 5 organizations have not decided yet is also a sign that it's not an easy question to answer, and it is possible, for example, like this one organization, to have different targets, really to make the target work and the commitments work for the way your organization works, and the way it is set up. So that was just something that I wanted to clarify, that might be lit up for some people. But then otherwise, I'll leave the floor to you.
I just want to clear your name and make sure that everybody knows you. No,
I can count.
Know how to count. All right. So let's go into the next part. But of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and we can answer them later. I'm seeing, yeah, thanks. Like I keep switching between your background picture and the presentation.
Yeah, sorry.
So basically, we've said within the REH, we have a number of working groups, and we have this. So basically, there's lots of subsets of organization within the REH. You have the signatories of the commitment, the statement of commitment that we just talked about, and then you have organizations that are also working together in working groups. And one of them is named the Carbon Working Group. It's emerged out of the initial like consortium of organizations that were partially the ones that were the first signatories of the statement of commitment, partially other organizations like HI who hadn't signed the statement but were still very interested in calculating, assessing their carbon footprint to check whether or not they could and should sign this commitment. And so in 2021, the group got together to assess their carbon footprints. And since then, it has morphed into like a standard working group of the REH, welcomed new organization and tried to widen the purpose beyond just the carbon footprint assessment. There's obviously the decarbonization, which is like the next step once you've assessed your carbon footprint. The goal is obviously to reduce your carbon footprint, and then that's the next challenge. But we also want to try and help organizations that are not in the working group, or even maybe not in the REH, but that might be trying to get started on the journey, whether at the carbon footprint assessment stage or at the action plan stage. And so since the end of 2024, we've really reworked our governance within the working groups to try and focus more on producing tools and analysis that aim at basically taking everything that we've been working on for the past 2 years, all the peer-to-peer assistance and exchanges and learnings that we've built together, and try and formalize it into tools or information like analysis papers to try and share with the wider community and support the sector in general in their decarbonization journey. And meanwhile, of course, we are still supporting each other in our trajectories and building knowledge by inviting external actors sometimes, or just generally exchanging information as we come by it. And so a part of the working group has been working on obviously our decarbonate, like our carbon reduction targets. And before we go into the questions to ask where you stand on all of this, I just wanted to have a quick overview of where do the members of the working group stand on those topics. So first, there's 12 organizations right now in the working group, and 10 of them are signatories of the Statement of Commitment on Climate. So that's a fairly heavy majority. And then there's a 11th organization that is not a signatory of the statement, but that has commitment independent of this statement that has the same 50% by 2030 reduction targets. And then there's the last, like the 12th organization has a general net zero in 2045 commitment with no target sets at this stage for 2030. So we are not we don't all have exactly the same target, but we are fairly aligned, in majority behind this 50% by 2030 reduction target, with all the caveats that Johana raised, that we might not have the same baseline, the same year of baseline. We don't have the same nature of commitment in absolute or relative value. So, but we do have this overall, like, sort of general target. So with that said, we have been asking ourselves a lot of questions about this target, and we wanted to ask you what you thought about it. So we've got a Slido with lots of questions. So we you have the QR code and number, the code that you can enter on slido.com. So maybe
you can either use your phone and use the QR code or go to slido.com. The QR code and the code are not going to leave. They're going to be on every slide, but it will be the same Slido throughout. So if you can take just maybe a minute to connect now so that we have most people on board. If you have any issues joining, let us know.
And if you have any problem or if you struggle to answer the questions, you can also, put your answers in the chat and we'll read them in parallel. But of course, if we get the Slido, that will be a bit easier and to see the results. And the rest of this is just, hoping to chat with you with the help of those questions. So we do encourage everyone to join. I don't know, Johana, if you see the number of people who have joined, and let me know when we...
I cannot see, but if you have joined, you should be able to see a question now. Okay, at least one person has been able to join.
Yeah, so that's good. So we have at least one. So first questions is, so in your organization, you might have targets, you might not have targets, you might have commitment at this stage. Has it changed since last year? And we are talking before US cuts, because of course, like, everything has changed in the past months. But we are wondering about like sort of the 2024 dynamic. All right, so 15 answers so far. We'll try to reach at least 20. But yeah, so it's good to see, like, there's more stays the same and increased than so at least no one has decreased. So that's a great great point. as we were saying in the, as Johana was saying in the report, we can see within our organizations that I guess we are fairly aligned in the sense that most of our organization, we had a huge push of like the dynamic of decarbonization, and it has sort of not gone down, but stalled a little bit in 2024. And so one of the questions is like, how do we keep the dynamic going and keep the efforts going further? So if we move to the next question. So for those of you that had that noted an increase, I can't remember if it was 20%, so that would have been 5-6 participation. Why has it increased? Do you have, like, can you give us a couple of words on what might have helped your organization increase their motivation? Right, so
and just
awareness.
a little note for Slido, the less word you use, the better it is. If you put in a big sentence, it's gonna get lost, just so you know.
Yeah, but like, since we don't have that many people. Okay, so just a smiley. All right, so so far, so 2030 is arriving is a good point. It is indeed now 2025, so the time to actually achieve our objectives is growing shorter and shorter. Specific HR and more awareness, also very interesting. So I think that's something that we saw in the organization that are part of the statement of commitment is that in 2021, 2022, I think back then we went from a collective one person that was like one organization that had one person dedicated to the topic to I think at some point we had like 8 or 9 dedicated staff collectively across the 10 or so organization. So specific HR definitely helps drive the topic. And maybe for those who, like the person who said more awareness, do you mean, and you can like open your mic or you can type it in the chat. Do you mean like awareness inside your organization based on like because of internal efforts, or general awareness like donors requirements or discussion in the yeah, I guess rising topic in society in general? Like, I don't know if it's the same person, but that would be like a general societal awareness. All right, so if, yeah, Aline?
Yeah, thank you, Camille. No, I didn't answer this question because it's the same at the Groupe URD. I mean, the dynamic is still the same, but I just wanted to share that my surprise, because I would have thought that like the more people get aware of and understand the decarbonization pathway, the more they realize that it's difficult to meet the targets. Mm-hmm. And I would have thought that you could be discouraged or even depressed, and all the more so because of the news. And so I'm just a bit curious to know, to have more information from other organizations. Thank you.
I mean, we did say before the US cuts, so maybe everybody had like is getting depressed very, very fast in the past month. But if anyone has, yeah, anything to answer, wants to contribute.
And also because what I could have seen on the field is that there can be also a bit of frustration specifically from the field teams, because sometimes they feel like it's something from the head office, coming from the head office. It's kind of another, sorry for the word, but it's another administrative layer, another bullshit coming from the headquarters. So I'm just wondering if it's real, if this answer reflects the feelings from the colleagues on the field.
So if anyone wants to answer, please do raise your hand, open your mic, or type in the chat. In the meantime, like, I think actually when you, like, hearing you say that, like, I think would maybe change my answer for HI. Like, I would have said same for HI, but I think actually the field, for example, is getting more motivated because like the dynamic started at headquarters, and it's not so easy to raise awareness globally. And for me, I have more, like HI has about 50 countries of operation, and I have more countries that have where I feel like the local staff has taken the topic for themselves and are really working on it now, and you know, have like sort of embraced it and are trying to put action plans in place. There are more countries now than 3 years ago. So yeah, I guess it's like, it depends on the countries and on the organizations. Again, if anyone wants to raise their hands, please don't let me talk aloud for the next 20 minutes. So next question, I think we can skip because it was like, if it decreased, why? So nobody had decreased motivation, so that's great.
Also, if I can just add, sorry, something from this, some feedback that I've received with regards to the specific issue is also that as the impacts of climate change are becoming more and more real, and we can see it, it also kind of is a push. It's no longer like so far away that it's like something, it is actually happening. So it also kind of motivates to get going.
So yeah, quick question that we did want to check what the impact of the USAID budget cuts had, if any, so far, because it's still quite new. And so if it had an impact, well, I would assume that it's a negative impact, but maybe not. That would be weird, but all right. So we're seeing generally that, yeah, there has been an impact. I don't know if anyone wants to say a quick word on like our testimony of the kind of impact. Yeah, Alexandre.
Hello.
Yeah.
So yeah, I take the liberty to talk, even if we don't have any USAID funds, but obviously we have a lot of partners who have, and well, we are a bit worried. We are worried about, you know, obviously next to our project, you know, some projects are closing, etc., etc. So well, and I can tell you for sure that some of MSF sections, so not MSF funds, have already, say, with the la pédale douce, just slowed their effort and their finance on some, among other things, on the environmental transition as a whole, not specifically on carbon, but yeah, one of them did. You know, MSF France, we said again that well, no, we want to carry on our efforts. MSF Switzerland as well, but others, you know, already stopped one of the part of the financing that was allocated for that. So immediate effect.
We had Pierre as well.
Yes, hi everyone. Just about this topic, it's not specifically about the budget cuts, but for us, I mean, at my own level, it was more like drafting a survey I was sharing it with like the VREC and with Marta, maybe some of you know Marta from the VREC, and she was telling me that to now, like due to the what was released, the decrease from Trump about the words that we can use or we can't use, and it's specifically climate. These type of things have an impact actually on our work, and now we have to change. Not we have to, but we have to be careful with what we use, the words we use when we do this environmental work with other organizations, especially if they have to work with US funds. So that was like kind of a survey to see climate adaptation, for example, and then had to change the wording of my survey because it may have been a little tricky for some people to answer these questions.
All right, thanks. And there's been a couple of remarks in the chat as well. And it's true that for now, the impact is mostly felt on projects, and it will maybe have to wait a little bit more to see what the impact on the environmental dynamic is, especially since other donors are not like still have environmental requirements as well. So we can't just completely like even if we wanted to, which we don't, but like even if our organization wanted to save on this topic, it's not possible to like completely give up on it. Yeah, Johana?
No, also just to add, because we said that something that was positive that like since we've done this follow-up report about the following up on the statement of commitment, we've seen that there's a lot of HR resources for this specific topic. I'm not sure that all those HR resources will survive huge budget cuts, depending on the NGOs, depending on how they're set up. But I would imagine that those are some of the positions that might not survive the tsunami. So that will be, yeah, we've highlighted how effective that was to have HR people. So.
Yes, that's true. I think the next question was, so that was the same. I think it's a bug. Yeah, I think Pierre, you were the taking these ones.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So we wanted to ask you this question that do you think NGOs can meet the 50%, the minus 50% by the 2030 carbon reduction target adopted by many? Yes, we want to see like you have your vision, like your opinion about it. So I can see that probably not is so far the main answer, which I guess is not surprising from like the discussions we had during the working group. Okay, 12 respondents.
I do appreciate that there's one, I think 8% of 12, like I'm assuming is like one organization, one person that is optimistic.
At least we have that. I don't know if anyone wants to say something.
Yeah, we have Matthias who raised his hand.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, and thanks first for this meeting. We're not part of the group. We're an NGO from Denmark, but we were invited because we also have a big focus on trying to become greener. Just on this question, I think it's so different what kind of ambition you have in terms of the scope. for scope 1 and 2, I think I think we at least we can reach our targets. But it's the scope 3 which is the big challenge, and especially the flights. So it's there are some differences in how you also count. Yeah.
And sorry if I can just jump in, Matthias, because I have a question for you. I think also you have your historical emissions are taken into account, so I feel like that's also adds a layer of complexity to all of this.
Yes, in our organization we have a quite strong commitment to reduce our emissions, and especially scope 1 and 2. We are also trying a lot with scope 3. We're a partner-based organization, so there's challenges to I mean, we can't control how all our partners what they are doing, but we try to integrate. And when we talk to our partners, we also try to address the need to address climate change, both adaptation and mitigation. But we also have historic responsibility, as was mentioned before, with CBDR RC. We all of us have a historic footprint, and our organization has been existing for more than 100 years. And as part of our anniversary, we made an estimate of all the emissions we have had during the 100 years. And we are trying to take the responsibility both by planting trees, but also investing in adaptation and efforts to address loss and damage. So it's for us the historic responsibility is important to consider, but it's not replacing our commitment to reducing our current emissions, because that's of course our commitment today. And there are challenges, especially on the flights, but also on some types of projects, especially in conflict zones. We do a lot of work in areas where there are conflicts or post-conflict, where security is the first priority, and it's more difficult to keep up within climate targets. A little bit off slide here, but that's about us.
Thank you. And I see that Sonia has also.
Hello, yeah, Sonia from the Climate Action Accelerator. I just also wanted to quickly react on the question about how realistic is it to meet the target. So I think we all know it's a very ambitious target, and it's very difficult to implement. I fully agreed what was just said about the difference in the scopes. So scope 1 and 2 being much easier to tackle than scope 3, which is of course the highest part. We also see from some, when we look at some examples of other sectors, for example, the National Health Service in the UK, they reduced the scope 1 and 2 emissions already by 60% between 1990 and 2019. So there are actually huge reductions possible. When we published the sectoral roadmap that many of you I think are aware, and I'm happy to add the link to the chat again, we did an analysis of emissions at the sectorial level. We also actually basically discussed the possibility to prolong the scope 3 target, notably for procurement, because it's possibly too ambitious to achieve that target by 2030, which doesn't mean we don't think it's not possible at all. We will soon release also the analysis of life cycle analysis, some key items in the sector, and from first results, at least for some items, we see, just by changing materials, you can reduce the impact by up to 60% of an item. So I think there are also some encouraging examples, even in the difficult scope 3. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if we have to continue on the next question. So now it's more like about how you feel. How do you feel about the possibility of not meeting this target of the decarbonization? Okay, it's interesting. I guess it will be interesting to have comments on the answers, especially with it doesn't really matter so far, like 50% of the answers, and then it would be a real failure. So it kind of like two opposite things.
Yeah, it would be good if I have like one person who said it doesn't really matter, and like I would be interested in hearing from one of the people who said it would be a good thing.
If I can jump in just to say that my answer, why it doesn't really matter, but I think it does matter. But just I met many people who told me that it doesn't really matter because they do not really feel accountable regarding the minus 50% decarbonization target. They say that the most important thing is to make all the possible efforts to towards decarbonization, but not really to achieve the goals. So I think there is an issue of accountability regarding this the targets.
I might jump on that one also. I think it's also a question of wording. Because I did answer, it doesn't really matter, but in a sense, because I didn't feel comfortable with it will be a real failure, which I don't think that there is a difference in between not achieving this 50%, but being on the way to do things and maybe doing 80% or 90% of this objective. So in that sense, yes, it doesn't not really matter. But the fact of not following this commitment, I do not agree. So for me, it was more of we are not there, but we are on our way. And yes, we did not achieve it. Yes, but maybe we have achieved 90% of this goal, which is very good still, but not a failure. Failure was very strong to me. So that's why I'd rather like to go on the mid answer.
Yeah, Matthias.
Yeah, just a quick point on this one as well. I don't know about other countries, but for us, it would actually be really big problems if we are not delivering, because it's a big fundraising opportunity. So yes, our funds are cut because of a big effect of the USAID cut, but now more than ever, we need to stick to our green brand because there are a lot of fundraising opportunities which we depend on.
So anyone who answered that it would be a good thing want to yeah, Alexandre.
Hello, yes, I will there. So it's not about I hate missing targets. Just that's not my. It's about legitimacy of what we say we would do. But no, I'm in a school of thought these days that think that we shouldn't aim for so high. Well, I read Aline's paper that the link was probably somewhere in the chat, and yeah, just working on this. Working on it makes us not working on something else. And so, in terms of agenda inside our organizations, well, if we consider that maybe this target is too high, not in terms of feasibility, but in terms of equity and environmental justice, if we consider that it is well above our fair share, well, then all the effort that we take to go beyond this fair share that is yet to be determined, but let's say, for the sake of the argument, let's say 25%. All the work that will have been tried between this 25 and 50, well, it's kind of a waste for something else. I don't know, to decolonize our practices or these type of things. And I'm not even talking about the fact that these 50% in itself as a public statement might be taken as we validate this global north injunction towards anyone to decarbonize their practices, especially towards the global south population that we're serving. So I think what would be a good thing is that we think about this objective in terms of equity and environmental justice, and that we find something else that is more in line with with the values that we hold ourselves accountable to. Thank you.
All right, fair. Johana, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, I did not select that it would be a good thing. But I guess that if we were to miss our target, we would have to explain why. And I think that might be something that's also, I mean, I guess if we reach the target, we will also say why we did. But if we don't, and also to highlight the limit that the sector can do without others, sustainable procurement is a really good example that was also mentioned in the chat. And it could be used also as an advocacy piece to say, well, I mean, we did everything that we can that's in our hands, and then everything is not up to us, and there needs to be collective effort. So I think that could say that it's a good thing, even though I did not select that option.
Okay, let's move to the next question. I think, yeah, we wanted to ask you, because this has been a big question that was discussed within the working group, whether you thought that, or you think that this 50% decarbonization target is fair for the aid sector specifically. Now, of course, there's going to be a follow-up question, like why. So. All right, so we have basically, it's like almost a 50-50 between like the no, it's not fair, and the yes plus yes, but under condition. So that's interesting. I think maybe we can move quickly to it's already like, so if you said that it's fair, why do you think it's fair? Like in one word and fairly quickly. And then we have the same question, same word cloud for the unfair. And hopefully we can also take like 5 minutes to have a bit of explanation about that. And then I leave the floor for the conclusion. That goes, yeah. Obviously, this if you thought it's fair, if you answered yes under condition, that's I don't know if you can keep the question active and also activate the next one. All right. So we still have one person typing, and then
okay,
maybe
great.
we move. All right. So we have Miley.
Thank God we waited for that answer.
All right. So if you thought it was unfair, then why? And then, maybe if any one of you on each side of the debate want to take the floor and tell us a little bit more about why you answered that way, that would be interesting. And obviously, if you wanted to say more, you still have the chat. Does if anyone want to give some insights about why you think it's fair or fair under condition, please do jump in, or unfair. We have 5 minutes left before the conclusion, so. So basically, what we see here is it reflects a lot like the discussions that we've had in the working group, where the question tend to circle around like the potential impacts of such a strong or such an ambitious target on our projects. Whether or not it's possible to actually achieve this 50% decarbonization target while achieving the same amount and the same quality of aid that we provide to people, and then whether we should be trying to reduce our footprints when we operate like most of our operation. Like if I speak for HI, for example, HQ represents, I think, about 10-15% of our emissions. So if I focus my energies on HQ, on our French HQ, because it's the one that's based in the north, then I'm missing most of the emissions. But if I focus on the countries where we operate, then should they really be the target of our reduction effort? And so we've had these discussions, and I think there's good arguments on both sides. And we don't have the final answer yet, which is what we wanted to hear from you as well. So Sonia, I think you've raised your hand. I'm sure you've had the same kind of discussion at the Climate Action Accelerator.
Yes, but with a slightly different conclusion, as I think many of you can imagine. So for us, I think the starting point is really the do no harm principle. So as humanitarian organizations, do their very best to reduce local waste pollution. It should be the same for greenhouse gas emissions. For us, is also what would be the underlying reason that certain sectors of society should be exempt from ambitious climate action? It's basically the question, where do you draw the line then? Should food companies not reduce their emissions because they provide essential goods? What about the health sector? The health sector is actually, also providing essential services and reduces. So I think it opens the bar to creating exceptions, which eventually, underlines global climate action. Where we fully agree is regarding a differentiation between, local national actors. So, for example, we work with with a number of local African partners, and also when you, for example, we have projects when hospitals, climate resilient and environmental sustainable hospitals. There it's more about the low carbon development path and strengthening resilience, but also it's not about reducing, but it's setting the actors on a low carbon development path. And I think the last point I wanted to make, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll be super brief, is also about stressing the co-benefits of climate action. So I find the discussion is very much about how it constrains, and of course it's an ambitious target, but there are a number of co-benefits to climate actions, be it through renewable energy installations, being less vulnerable to price shocks and fluctuations, be it around, reducing local air pollution. Many mitigation measures go hand in hand with adaptation. So I think it's also important to really stress the co-benefits of climate action. And I stop here because we're running out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexandre, if you want to reply in under 1 minute.
Yeah, I would just say, because I think no one around this table said that we should stop any decarbonization efforts. So that's what I wanted to stress here. What we're challenging is the magnitude of this objective, not even in terms of feasibility. There are co-benefits on a lot of actions there, and some other there are not. And I think drawing the line is today is 50% is like the average, and yeah, I think that's a problem in terms of a public narrative and what it pushes. So, but please, people, don't stop your decarbonization effort. It's just a matter of, and no one here is looking for an exemption. So I'm a bit ill at ease with the way you started your answer, Sonia. So that's why I definitely wanted to react a little. Thank you.
Just briefly, when I said exemption, I was referring to like international reference standards. In all international, be it Science-Based Targets Initiative, be it ISO guidelines, be it Oxford Net Zero principles. That's what I was referring to exemptions. I wasn't meaning that, it's about, we're not doing anything. It was about the ambition. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Thanks. Well, thanks both of you. And I think, as you can see, I think we could have this conversation for much longer, and we definitely have had this conversation for a while in the carbon working group, and we're having like a passionate debates, but also trying to, as I said before, provide like a perspective that we think can be helpful to the sector. So if anyone wants to have this conversation with us, don't hesitate to reach out to the REH, and you'll be redirected to us. And if you want to join the REH and our group, we can obviously we're usually French speaking, but we can also have specific meetings if necessary in English. To have quality discussions is always great with organizations that have different perspectives. And I'll give the floor back to, I don't know if it's Johana or Camille, for the closing words, but thank you all for your participation.
Yes, thank you, Camille. So we will quit this session with some optimism, with seeing that everybody almost think that is a good thing to be committed on the climate. Okay, there is not a lot of pressure. Most people think that it doesn't really matter if we don't reach the 50% target, but it will be also a failure if we totally abort the commitment, or if our decarbonization is zero. What we can see is the most we progress on this carbon footprint estimation, the most we go ahead on our carbon trajectory, the most we mature the question and our vision on the carbon emission is more and more precise and specific. I don't know what will be the following step. I hope that 5 years after being committed at more than almost 15 NGOs now on this 5 commitment, I hope we will continue to progress as a group. But as we are in a different situation, and of course, there is the USAID context that will clearly create additional constraint on the environment movement. I hope we will continue to progress together and keep aligned on the same objective. But when I see the discussion we can have in subgroups, it can be complicated, of course. So clearly, the last word will be whatever will be the different objectives or the new objectives or whatever the organization that will keep this objective alive and applicable for them. I hope we will continue to discuss together and evaluate together on that topics, because what is sure is all of that, the final goal is to consume less fossil fuel, because I think the cause of the climate change is clear for everybody. And at the end of the day, the common actions we will do on where we work is to consume less fuel. So until we will do the same action at the final, I hope we will keep in touch in the different discussion. And so welcome to join us at the Environment Network, and more specifically in the Carbon Working Group. So thank you for attending this meeting, and keep in touch with our progress. Thanks for Johana for the preparation of this meeting and all the follow-up work. And then please take the time to read the full report of this follow-up, and see you next time for the coming forum of the RVH. We'll keep you informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.